Alright, parts. What is this? Fourth video? Yeah. Alright, so this next video, my phone's blowing up. Emails. But, second part of college. College was not hard. College was not easy either, though. Especially when I went to USF, I took biochemistry, genetics, and one other class in one semester. So I kind of made sure that when I set up my classes, that I did not put the classes that were very hard in a full schedule. And just for reference, I only got 6 Bs during my entire undergraduate career. One of them being English 1 and government, because that was my first semester in college and I thought I could treat it like high school. Couldn't. Next one was Calculus 1. Did not like calculus. Next one, which proved why I shouldn't be an engineer. The next class, I believe, was one semester where I took 6 classes, and that was Introduction to Diseases or something like that, and it was like every single pathology that affects human beings and animals. It was an insanely dense course, along with everything else. And I messed up on quizzes, not so much exams, so that's kind of upsetting, but it's okay, whatever. Next one was Physics 1. That was a dang hard class I could not figure out. And also, in hindsight, do practice questions. If you're in physics, do practice questions. A lot of practice questions. Different variables, different formulas until you know those formulas in and out, and you'll be good. That's what happened with one friend. He scored 99% on every single exam and like above 100% on another because we had a curve. So keep that in mind. A little bit of a tidbit there. Last one was Orgo 1. Was the only other class that I got a B in. And it was because I did not go about it in a way that solidified understanding and more along the lines of just root memorization. Kind of works, so that's why I got a B. But on the other side, it doesn't really work. And then I came back and got an A and an A minus. So I got an A in Orgo 2 and then A minus in Physics 2, just reference. Because I learned how to adapt it. I learned how to go about the content because it's not just normal. It wasn't like a normal class, basically. So pretty much that's why I'm saying it's not easy and it's not hard. I mean, I was never like 100% like in the class. Like if I got an A, then it was like a 91 to 95. There's only like 2 classes, one being bioethics, where I got 100 or got above 100%. I think I finished bioethics with like 102 or something like that. So I was never like a high A student, but like A's an A at the end of the day, unless it's they have honors or anything like that. And even A pluses don't really count towards GPA, so what's the point? A minuses do, which suck because I don't know why A minuses do, but then A pluses don't. But that's just my personal opinion. So pretty much went into it, started at USF. I did not work as I had saved up enough to kind of pay for rent as well as family help and whatnot to cover the necessities. I didn't have some giant like $100,000 in my account. I did not have that, but I had enough to cover rent. I had enough to cover utilities, and because my father's a mechanic, my car expenses were taken care of, which was a plus. And my family has supported me the entire way. So I'm very lucky in that sense. And very fortunate as well. I'm putting that out there too. As I know a lot of people struggle, especially going through med school and going through undergraduate with loans and everything else along those lines. So I went through, didn't really work too much as I was going through the academic side of things. And then I volunteered at Moffitt Cancer Center, which is where I would work during my first gap year. At Moffitt Cancer Center, when I volunteered, I worked in the outpatient chemotherapy department, basically, so that it's where the patients would come in, they would receive their chemotherapy or medications, basically, and then my job was making sure everything was stocked and that patients had everything that they needed, food-wise, drink-wise, etc. Just kind of thing to get my foot in the door, kind of. And then I realized that I should probably get something more substantial for clinical experience. And so I worked on getting a CNA license, got my CNA license, and then I applied to work at Moffitt Cancer Center. When I applied to work at Moffitt Cancer Center, I got rejected from the first position, which was a bone marrow transplant division. They are those patients are very, very sick, and if you bring anything into them or you are not properly sanitized or anything along those lines, then those patients can easily get a common cold that will end their lives. And that's something to consider as well if you're working in oncology or if you're going into oncology. Please be aware of what you're doing for the patient's sake. It's heartbreaking seeing some of the patients have a common flu or something like that and they're debilitated and their recovery takes 10 times as long as me or you, as long as you're healthy, whoever's watching this. So keep that in mind. And especially if you're visiting also, even if you're just visiting like family in the unit or whatever the case may be, just be mindful of it. It'll go a long ways. So I got rejected from it, but I ended up getting accepted into the float pool, and it was probably the best thing because the float pool, what happened was I was able to go around to every single unit, including the one that rejected me, and I was able to work with all those different patient populations, specialized nurses, NPs, PAs, surgeons, and other doctors. And I did work night shift, so that way it allowed me to, I try to use it to study for MCAT. Not a smart idea. Have dedicated time for MCAT. Don't try to do it while you're doing something else. Personal, and we'll get into that. But pretty much I took that opportunity and I worked part-time. So I worked 1 to 2 shifts a week because it's 12-hour shifts, night shift. And then I got close enough with the manager of the float pool where she ended up getting given a brand new unit in the hospital, which then I transferred over to. And it was a med-surg unit, and I worked with a lot of people that I had worked with prior, and we did great things. It was fun. It was fantastic. During that time period as well, I also was working on a research project with a biochemistry professor by the name of Dr. Merkler at the University of South Florida. And he presented the project to me as kind of a lead, as he didn't really have the time to go through and do the grunt work for it, of doing the research, finding out what would work as a good target. And the project was finding a new anti-malaria. The project ended up having issues with funding, and we were also working with 2 other labs in the Northeast, and both of them very big labs, a lot of projects, a lot of PhD students, and Dr. Merkler had 3 or 4 PhD students as well as he was teaching, and his colleagues in the Northeast had quadruple times the amount of people, and they had a lot of funding and stuff like that. And there's been some kind of upheaval in the USF chem department and whatnot when it comes to funding and all that stuff. So that kind of was a fallback, which means that we couldn't really get to where we wanted to be by the time that I left. And by the time I left, we had found the targets. We were working on expressing the protein to show whether or not the protein was actually active in being the antimalarial targets the target to go into the mosquitoes and into the patient population that kind of basically disrupts the process of malaria. So it's almost like a vaccine, kind of like a post-drug kind of situation. And one of them was tryptophan that we were focusing on. Was basically a was a unit of the tRNA that we were focusing on to kind of disrupt that, so that way the malaria could not progress further, and it could not, and it would basically be disrupted, basically. And so we were working on that. Ended up not getting to where we had super wanted it. Come the time that I left, so I didn't get a publication out of it or anything like that. But it was very good interaction, because I also went to group meetings with Dr. Merkler and the PhD students where they would discuss their findings, and discuss the whole process of getting a PhD and everything like that in biochemistry. So it was really neat. So following that, I moved to Gainesville, where my amazing fiance went to school at the University of Florida, and we'd been dating for a while at that point. So we moved in together, and the second gap year is where I spent time with at the Gainesville Skin Cancer Center. Fantastic people, fantastic. Dr. Stower has been an amazing mentor for me, as well as Dr. Lee, both amazing and very highly respected in their fields. And I'll probably go more in depth than that later. But another thing also, another shout out to my other mentors, it would be Dr. Horst and Dr. Hembry over at Moffitt Cancer Center, as well as Dr. Gestant, who is an interventional radiologist at Moffitt. So Dr. Hembry and Dr. Horst are internal medicine doctors at Moffitt, and they showed me what it truly is like to be an internal medicine doctor. I did rounds with the residents, with the other med students from USF, as well as them, and we saw multiple patients, discussed multiple different findings, and the general care plan going throughout when it came to oncology and everything along those lines. Excuse me. So, and then my time with Dr. Gesant was fantastic as well. I got to meet pretty much the entire interventional radiology department at Moffitt Cancer Center, and they're all exceptionally skilled. Some of them are more specialized than the others, and it's all very procedure oriented. It's very fast paced, and it's not like they go home at 5. They have call all the time, because if there's a patient that has a chest tube, or if they have a patient who has a collapsed lung, or if they have a patient who has a infection or a problem with one of their ports, then they're the ones that have to go do the procedure. Amongst a multitude of other things. That's just things I can remember off the top of my head. So that's kind of my time at Moffitt, and then going into Gainesville, I did that. And while my time with Dr. Stower and them, I did research with them, as well as being a full-time medical assistant in Mohs surgery. So I was assistant, where I would go and I would basically canvas and set up the rooms, do the patient histories, patients charting, all of it, and I was taught by them how they want it done. And then I also assisted during the procedure, and I assisted during the closures as well, which would range from simple closures that were simple single line stitches with 2 layers, and then I'll go more in depth with that and whatnot. But grafts, cartilage grafts, sometimes just second intent, where basically you would allow it to fill in by itself, and multiple different closure practices, some of which is considered like almost plastic surgery. So, and that's kind of what led me to where I'm at now with what I want to achieve. And what I want to achieve is pretty much my professional goal is to take, say, dermatology, if I'm lucky enough to get a spot in dermatology, taking that and mixing that with oncology to some extent, or cancer to some extent, as I've seen what skin cancers can do if they're left untreated. Whether it's melanoma, squamous cell, basal cell, Merkel cell, like any of it. If any of it's left untreated, if any of it is improperly treated, it can be devastating. It can metastasize. It can go places that it shouldn't go. It can cause problems. It can wrap itself around nerves and cause a lot of issues. And that's just kind of how it goes. But my goal is hopefully mixing derm with oncology to bring it to communities that don't have, say, the funding to have a dermatologist, or they don't have a population that's large enough to warrant having a dermatologist. So a lot of family medicine doctors would therefore be kind of the dermatologists for those populations. And if there's something problematic, they would get biopsied, and then they would refer them to us at Dr. Stower's, where there's a lot of small towns around Gainesville that we would get those patients, because Mohs surgery is a fellowship. It's a training past dermatology that's super, super hyper competitive. But there's a reason why. And it's because it's very finite work. It's very tiny. Sometimes the lesions are that big, and you go that big, so that much skin is cut or so, and then you have to close it and make it look like nothing was ever there. So it's an amazing field, and hopefully I'll be fortunate enough to be in it. But I'll get more in depth with my goals and why I have other things as well that I'm interested in outside of just dermatology, or surgery in general as well, or procedures in general. But that kind of wraps up basically my last 2 years of college, my first gap year, and my second gap year. And then acceptance wise, I'll go into that in probably another video of, which, yeah, I'll go through that. I'll do another one real quick with that. So that way that one's uploaded as well this week. But once again, like it if you want. Thank you for watching, and hopefully it helps someone. It's kind of the whole point of doing this. And then also be a refer back for my son, as I've said, I think 4 times now. So, anyway, have a good one, guys.